So I just got home from watching Aladdin, and I wanted to give my 2 cents, my review on the movie because it has been getting, well, I wouldn't say panned, but it hasn't been getting a very big score with critics. I think the average rating is like 6 to like 6.5, so it's actually really low. Not as low as Dumbo. Dumbo was a complete train wreck, but this one I honestly think they're judging it too hard. I honestly, what came out of there, and I was pleasantly surprised by the movie. I really had low expectations, and maybe that's why I'm looking at it this way. But it exceeded what I was expecting from it. I can see why they could possibly look at this as a 6.5 movie, but honestly, think it needs to be higher, maybe 7.5. And I'll go over the reasons why now. So I want to say that this movie is probably the most shot-for-shot remake of its source material of the original Aladdin. Aside from, like, I think Beauty and the Beast almost did it. Like, you could recognize, oh yeah, that's from this scene and this scene here. But Aladdin did almost the same thing as Beauty and the Beast and, like, doing shot-for-shot remakes. They did change it up, though, enough to where it does its own thing. And with the characters, they did their own thing. Especially with the genie, which I'll get to in a little bit. But in terms of the star power, so the main three, we have Naomi Scott, who's Princess Jasmine, we have Will Smith, who's the genie, and we have, might say his name wrong, Mena Masad, who is Aladdin. So I'll tell you this much, out of those three, I think Mena Masad was probably the weakest link out of all of them. In terms of like his like when he was singing and his parts when he's singing, it wasn't that great. It wasn't bad. It just wasn't the best with what he needed to do in the singing parts in the movie. Naomi Scott actually did really good, and she sang that new song "Speechless" that they added to the live action. She sang it very well. Although I will say this: when you watch the movie, you watch her sing "Speechless," it really the tone of the music, the way that it's written, composed, it feels like it shouldn't belong in this movie. It's a great song, but it shouldn't belong. Like, you'll hear and you'll be like, huh, it sounds like this doesn't belong here. It's a great song, but it just probably would have been better as something else or something more modern. And I don't know if it's just because the composer wanted to add this to give Jasmine more time and just didn't realize they had to kind of have the same feeling as the other songs, so it make it feel like it's supposed to be included in the soundtrack. But my thought was it just kind of felt out of place. Still a great song though. I think one gripe that a lot of critics have had was that it says it's not as magical as it should be, or as the original was. And I think one thing you have to understand is the movie Aladdin, the original one, first of all, it's animation, so you can do a lot of other stuff that you really can't do in live action, or wouldn't really translate well to live action. That's one thing. But the other thing that I'm thinking about, and this, you might disagree with me, and I was actually talking to one of my friends after the movie who kind of pointed this out, was this movie was trying to show, or trying to push more than the original one, even though the original had the same message, but it was like, it's not what's on the outside, it's on the inside, and they pushed it a little bit more with this one than they did with the original Aladdin. And so it didn't feel as they had to show all the great magic. Like they do that, but like you don't see Jafar turn into a snake. You don't see as often Genie changing to different caricatures or whatever. Like, he does do that, and the way that he actually do it sometimes is actually pretty interesting and entertaining to watch. But people might say like, oh, it didn't have the same spark or magic, but I think felt for the tone of the movie that they did for this one, it felt right to have it that way, to like put it down a little bit and focus more on the characters than on like the genie and the magic. I know that's kind of weird to think. You're like, that's barbaric. The Aladdin is about the magic. Like, it is, but this one just it just felt a little more grounded, and some people might not like that, but I felt that they did great having to do it with less, but more focus on like the development of the characters, which they did very well. I really liked how they did Jasmine. Jasmine, as we always know, she's always been that princess who was like very angsty, very non-conformative, and wants to do her own thing, and she gets the chance to do that here. Albeit it seems like it's a little bit toned down in some parts. I could go forever on the specifics, but it's not as like risque. Like, for example, like her seducing and kissing Jafar is not in there, and her being obviously scantily clad to do that is not in there. But she does her own stuff. The way that she stands up to Jafar in multiple in 2 scenes particularly, it was refreshing to see her do that, because you don't see that, I guess you don't get to see that extent of her, not going down without a fight, and that was really good. Now let's Aladdin. Like I said, Aladdin. I don't know. He looked the part. His acting of Aladdin, like I felt like, yeah, he's Aladdin. It's just the singing was the part that I was kind of turned off by. Like, he's not a bad singer. I just felt like he was the weaker one. And now some people might be thinking, oh, but wait a minute, Will Smith is not a singer. Like, he should be the weakest part. Well, this is where I'm going to go and defend Will Smith and defend what they did with Genie. So, a little backstory, if you don't know, but when Aladdin was being created, when they're talking about who they wanted to be the Genie, they had already made up their mind that they wanted Robert Williams to do this, even without going to him first. Like, they wrote it for him. So, the role of Genie was made to cater to his strengths, which was his stand-up, his improv, his different voices. And so you can see that in Aladdin, obviously, when he's singing as well, and playing and putting his little voices as he's singing in different parts, especially in Prince Ali. And so a lot of people were like, well, how's Will Smith going to do this? How is he going to live up to Robin Williams? And the way that he does it is that he doesn't do anything that Robin Williams does. He does like little nods to what Robin Williams did in Aladdin, but he does his own thing. Like, his singing style is like something that would be on his album. He does sing, but his demeanor, the way that you hear his charisma, is different than Robin Williams. Robin Williams was like, wow, the place, like, hey, yeah, yo, yeah. But Will Smith is more like a cool, gentler one, and that he's carrying to his strings, and that's why I loved how he did that. He made it his own. He did his own interpretation of it, and not trying to imitate Robin Williams. And I think that was a great move for him. Some people might not like it. Some people might be like, well, he's not this and Genie like this. Well, you can't compare him to Robin Williams. They were both different types of people, different types of actors, and they can't do the same thing. Like, Robin Williams could never do what Will Smith did as Genie, and vice versa. And again, some people be like, well, Robin Williams was the superior Genie, and to for the most part, I can agree. But I actually think Will Smith's Genie was great. He brought his own flavor to it, and he's what kept me engaged. Like the other Genie did in the Robin Williams in the 1992 version. That's what Will Smith did to me. He was just playing it. He was playing himself, and some people might not like that, but I thought it was really smart on his end to do that. But yeah, I think overall the movie was pretty good. I don't think it was their best live action movie yet, but it was a lot better than Dumbo. I'll tell you that much. And I think it's a lot better than Cinderella, because they were to keep the music aspect of the original movie that they got it inspired from. I will say this though, the one thing that I just could not get into was Jafar. So I think he's played by Marwan Kenzari, and he just didn't feel that menacing. It just I don't know if it's the director or the script, but he just never felt that he was like, oh, such a huge antagonist or villain. And it could be just the way that he looked. He didn't really Jafar is funny because I keep talking about you shouldn't like compare the two, but Jafar in the original version had like this, he looked evil, and in this one they tried to do the same, but it it didn't work out the same. That for some reason, yeah, Jafar just didn't get to me, and I was really bummed that he didn't get his little singing part once he becomes a sorcerer. That's not in there, and so boohoo. I actually am sad of that because I really wanted that in there. They did add some cool scenes. That they had like this dancing scene, this kind of Bollywood style, well, I guess Arabian style dance, which was actually really cool, and I loved how they added that. And then they added a whole different dance scene with I think it was Prince Ali, or was it Never Had a Friend Like Me? I can't remember. It's one of those two songs that they had at the end of the movie where they had a little dance off too. And Naomi Scott, she actually did this like little robotic hip hop move in her part, and that's actually pretty cool. I will say this though, the ending. So when the credits start rolling, it's a bit surprising because they do Will Smith does a version, or at least borrows the beat from A Friend Like Me, or You Never Had a Friend Like Me, and you hear "We the best music, DJ Khaled," and I was like, oh my gosh, why? He always has it, and it just felt, and I didn't want to listen to it. I was like, nope, I'm done. I'm gonna get out of the theaters. This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Don't do that. But yeah, I think critics are panning it way too hard, and I will say this: probably the best part will be when Will Smith does sing "You Never Had a Friend Like Me," because that part was cool. He put his own flavor to it, so it wasn't like exactly the way that it was done in Aladdin. Again, the story has been modernized, so a lot of stuff that might have been sketchy in the animated version is not found in here. But and one cool thing though is they make Jasmine Sultan, so that was pretty cool. So they changed it a little bit, and that I actually did like that they made her Sultan, because it kind of just does like a whole 180 where the actual song's like, no, you can never be one, girl can't be one, blah blah blah, and he's like, well, you know the people better than anyone else, you should be the Sultan, which is how they get around the whole marrying a prince thing instead of the Sultan getting rid of the law. So that was a cool little take and modernization to the movie, but yeah. So I overall, actually me myself, I would give it a 7.8 out of 10, almost an 8. I think just a few parts here and there, it wasn't I wasn't as deeply engaged, but that's just me. So let me know what you thought about the movie, if you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you completely hated the genie or completely loved Mina Masad, Aladdin, and singing. So let me know in the comments. This is David the Smash Fan from Chimina Podcast, and I'm out.